Ladies and gentlemen, here we are, another session of the Airfreight Pharma digital event. And the title that we've got for this whole event is Essential Transport for an Essential Industry. And my goodness me, this last 18 months or so has shown how much interest the whole world has on this particular subject matter. And when you see people like the guests I've got today, they're the guys who are helping coming up with the solutions and making everything matter for the rest of us. So guys, firstly, before I even introduce you, thank you so much. You're doing a fantastic job. And I hope everybody at home appreciates you, because everybody outside of the home most definitely appreciates you. So really, really thank you so much. Now, the people I'm talking about, firstly, is I've got Jeff Kemprecos, and I do apologize, guys, if my pronunciation of any specific names is not as best as it could be, but hopefully by the end of the show it will improve. So Jeff Kemprecos, who's the Director of Communications, Government Affairs and Market Access, GSK for the Gulf. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Believe you me, it's our pleasure. And then we've got Hassan, who's the Head of Logistics and Customer Service, GSK for the Gulf and the Near East region. So Hassan, lovely to see you, sir.
Lovely to see you, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. And I love the signage that you've got next to the TV screen, lads. So it just shows how seriously everybody takes it. So that's a great one. Good bit of PR there. And then we come to Fabrice Panza, who's the Manager Global Cool Chain Solutions with ETIHAD Cargo. So Fabrice, lovely to see you again, sir.
Lovely to see you again, Chris.
And last but by no means least, and as part of the success team, we've got Andrea Battaglia, who's the Special Products Development Manager with ALHA Group. So Andrea, lovely to see you again.
Lovely now, for me. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, gents, what we're going to do in a minute is we're just going to show a success story. And I say success story because there's been so much negativity over this last 18 months, whether it's to do with people, their families, restrictions, vacations, all sorts. Okay. And it's so nice now to see what's actually gone into the successes that we're now seeing and the way we're learning to live with this damn pandemic. So the video is all about a product called Sotrovimab. I hope that's right, Jeff and Hassan. Is that good enough pronunciation?
Sotrovimab.
Yeah.
Sotrovimab. Right, I've got to remember that one. Sotrovimab. Sounds like a centre forward for a Russian team. But Sotrovimab, beautiful. Now, Salem, if you could just put that video up so that we can at least see that little story first. And thanks to the production team at ETIHAD. Right, now that sets the scene, gentlemen. So nice video there, Fabrice. So great thanks again to the team. Now, gentlemen, what I'm going to do this time now is I'm just going to give a little bit of an insight into the skills base and the background of you all. So I'm just going to do a little bit of just explaining what we're going to be doing today. So firstly, pharmaceutical handling. So important, and now everybody globally who's now seen a different side to the supply chain, they know how important that has been. So transporting pharmaceutical products demands rigorous logistic approaches from everybody in the chain, and especially now for air cargo. So the facilities are important, the content, the packaging for temperature sensitive products, all to do with pharmaceuticals and vaccines. So important. And these shipments require specific equipment, storage facilities, harmonized handling. And when I say storage facilities, that's something that I'd like to cover later on, because obviously the quicker we get them through the facilities, the better. And above all, strong cooperation among the cold chain partners. So that's why we've got the 4 of you in this wonderful team today. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to hear a little bit more and a little bit more detail about the specifics of Sotrovimab, which is an MAB, which stands for monoclonal antibody treatment for patients diagnosed with COVID-19. So this is for patients diagnosed with COVID-19. So through this collaboration, amongst all of you as partners along the whole chain, and also with different time zones, Abu Dhabi was the first in the world to receive Sotrovimab. The first patient was infused, and we're going to go into the infusion criteria or technique, or what it actually involves shortly, within hours of plane wheels touching ground at Abu Dhabi International Airport. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to introduce the key players in this wonderful team. So firstly, Jeff. Okay, now I don't want to embarrass you, and I know the family will be listening to this one day and they say, my God, is that my dad? So firstly, okay, Director of Communications, Government Affairs and Market Access. So that's a wonderful title in itself. Based in Dubai, lovely location, so fair play to you there. And you lead the policy advocacy across a wide range of health and pharmaceutical industrial issues. And this work includes healthcare reform, intellectual property and trade-related issues, access to innovative medicines and vaccines, and also regulatory harmonization. That includes policies and legislation affecting competition, investment, and innovation in the pharmaceutical sector constitute and primary focus. Now, on top of that, you've got public policy work, and you've also been working in the innovative biopharmaceutical industry across a variety of countries and regions for almost 30 years. And within that, the government affairs and public policy communication and market access teams who are responsible for up to 140 countries. So my friend, you do look relaxed with all that responsibility, and I must applaud you for that. Now, currently serving in your second term as chairman of the Intellectual Property Committee for the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturing Association in the Gulf, PHRMAG, and a leader, and also the DOH, Department of Health Engagement Group. You're also a member of UK Business Council's Healthcare and Life Science Working Group and the US Chamber of Commerce Gulf Business Council, and also Oman American Business Council. I feel as if I should be standing up and applauding you now, Jeff, but I won't embarrass you. So now I'm going to move on to Hassan. Hassan, thank you as well for joining us, Head of Logistics and Customer Service. And you're also based in Dubai, and you lead the supply and export operations to customers in the Gulf and the Near East countries. Now, the scope of your work includes securing supply to meet regional demand, very important, and the press coverage of all the issues now with supply and demand and transportation has really emphasized the importance. So this encompasses planning supply from global manufacturing sites, coordinating import operations, and managing the distribution hub in Jebel Ali, which is in the UAE. And you also oversee export and freight operations to customers, and the availability and on-time delivery for GSK pharmaceutical and vaccine products. Again, you've worked in the supply chain operations across a range of industries, including food manufacturing, logistics service providers, courier and freight operations. So well done, sir, and a great bio as well. Now, Fabrice, okay, 25 years experience in sales and business development, used to be a military instructor officer in the French Army, and you've also had various positions within the industry. Let me just see here now. You joined Air France KLM back in 2008, where you were in charge of sales for Eastern France, and then joined the French sales management team until 2012. 2013, nominated into the Air France KLM Pharmaceutical Group. And from there, you've taken over roles head of product and development for pharmaceutical logistics. And in 2019, you took over the global responsibility for quality under the GDP and QA Pharma, and also launched performance program enhancement and investment for cool chain products. And since May 2020, you're leading both the pharma and the fresh high-value goods segments within ETIHAD Cargo. So brilliant again. And Andrea, Battaglia, Special Products Development Manager. Also took the role of Special Products Development Manager for the ALHA Group after having held the role of Operations Manager for 6 years. You've got a 20-year career in the airport sector and currently involved in numerous international collaborations and in the development of technological innovation projects for the handling of pharmaceutical products. In parallel, operational responsibility, Andrea, you've also dedicated yourself to professional training with the role of air cargo trainer since 2020, and you're also responsible for the design and development of ALHA Academy's pharmaceutical and special cargo training courses. Now, for anybody listening, my goodness me, what a skill. It's like having a Galactico group of players from a football team, all top of their game and all very experienced and all very focused on what they're doing. So what I'd like to do now, if I may, gents, and first of all, starting with you, Jeff, can you just give us a quick insight into what the last 18 months has meant to you personally within your position?
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. Well, thank you for the very kind introduction. One thing that wasn't in my bio that you read out was the word pandemics. And so, I've been in the industry almost 30 years, but I really have never been prepared for what we all went through at a personal, social, and company industry level the last 18 months. I do remember as a child, my grandmother telling me about the pandemic, the Spanish flu that she lived through, but could never even imagine what it would really be like in our own lives. What I should say is that, GSK is the world's leading vaccine company by sales. We have a very broad range of vaccines. We've been active in the vaccine space for a long, long time. And when the pandemic broke out, our CEO, our company committed to a range of activities, support to defeat the pandemic, but primarily focusing on our vaccine capabilities. And we partnered with other players in the industry, and that work is ongoing. But in March, our medical director here in the office in Dubai, he's famous for sending around slides when there's something emerging from the laboratories. And around early March, he sent another one of those packets of slides, and I thought, oh dear, when will I get a chance to look at this? But, it said COVID, it said Sotrovimab, and I started to look through the slides, and our medical director said, hey guys, I think you want to pay attention to this here.
Yeah.
GSK seems to have something exciting cooking in the laboratories, a therapeutic. So this is separate from and parallel to the work around the vaccines. So indeed, that day, the next day, we took a look at it, and our medical director gathered us for a briefing, and we looked at it. We said, this is like outstanding. I mean, the interim survey results were showing an 85% decline in hospitalizations, an 85% or so reduction in fatalities. And again, the vaccines were coming on stream around the world between December and March, but still limited quantities, hadn't reached a lot of the population. So the idea that GSK might have an exciting therapeutic, and we were developing this in collaboration with Vir Biotechnology, that we might have a promising therapeutic, that caught the imagination of the folks, the team here, Hassan and I, in the office. So over the next few days, we started calling the health officials up and down the Gulf, and it was electrifying. I can tell you there was one Gulf country we called, we said, would you like a briefing on this? The undersecretary said, and we said, anytime in the next week or two. The undersecretary said, how about tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
And we dialed in at 10 o'clock in the morning. His whole team was there. The health minister was briefed by 2 o'clock, and they were talking about purchase orders and supply by 3 o'clock that afternoon. Here in the UAE, same thing. We called the Department of Health, and this was from day one, constant briefings, regular medical updates and briefings, all the way to when the US FDA approved it several months later. And the UAE approved it within hours, issued an emergency use authorization within hours of the US FDA. And what that meant at that moment was that everything would go into warp speed, everything would get accelerated after that moment when the UAE approved the product for use here.
I've got to say, and no matter how many times you reflect or you listen, the collaboration, the speed, and the capability of the scientists and the expert minds to overcome or to come up with something that, you know, could take such a, or to make such a major impact on this terrible pandemic. It's incredible. It's incredible. And like many things now in the rest of industries, this pandemic period has probably hastened or sped up the amount of automation, digitization, data sharing, knowledge, collaboration across. It's actually been a very positive thing. So, you know, some good has come out of this terrible period that we've had. Now, with the speed of uptake, Jeff, okay, and also the understanding, many people at the beginning, they were hearing that word for the first time, therapeutics, and people didn't realize what it was. They didn't understand that certain other treatments they were finding were having impacts on patients. And it was the rapid decline in the patient's health once they got to a certain level that was causing such concern. So Sotrovimab, if you want to just briefly just explain to us now, you know, what it is, when it's applied, and explain to us about the infusion process, so that people can actually understand what it is, because I'm sure there's many that aren't familiar with that particular name as they are with some of the other vaccines that, you know, that have been well published through the media.
Thanks, Chris. And it's always moments like this that I wish our medical director were here with us. But just to back up a minute, I just want to say from March to June, the end of May, when the product was approved here, the same question you're asking, you know, the health authorities, the physicians, the clinicians, the specialists, all wanted to know what Sotrovimab was all about. We told them it was a monoclonal antibody. We told them it was a therapeutic. They all wanted to know how it worked, what were the limitations, the benefits, et cetera. So we started, even prior to approval, we started to do those high-level briefings for the authorities, for the procurement folks, and for the clinicians who would actually one day, we hoped, get to use the product. The Sotrovimab is classified as a monoclonal antibody. It's a therapeutic. The way it works is if a patient were diagnosed with COVID, in each country there are protocols and guidelines set up so that the physician can make a determination if the symptoms are mild to moderate and relatively early on in the COVID infection. They can make a determination if that patient has enough risks in their profile, such as age or BMI or comorbidities. They can make the determination to go from the testing center to the infusion center. Sotrovimab comes in vial form. It's infused in the center. It takes 30 to 40 minutes, and those patients are infused, monitored, tracked, put in the system, and then they're sent home.
So, and it's, again, just excuse my ignorance, Jeff. The infusion is just like, you know, when you have a drip.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And how quickly does it come into effect, or how quickly, you know, would a patient experience some sort of improvement or stabilization?
Yeah, I think this is fairly characteristic of monoclonal antibodies, that patients can report feeling better pretty early on, in a matter of hours. A day or two later, we get reports all the time of patients starting to feel better, depending on the severity of their disease. And certainly, you know, certainly a matter of days later, we would expect them to be experiencing quite a bit of feeling better and recovery. It is on an individual basis, but the impact of the monoclonal antibodies is observed pretty quickly.
Brilliant. It's such a fascinating subject, and I can remember I've been in hospital myself with a couple of infections, and as soon as they put you on the drip, you start feeling better. So, you know, I can only imagine with the stress and the awareness of people knowing that, you know, if they're getting something like this, you know, it takes away some of that terrible worry, which I think most people were so frightened to go into hospital, and if their respiratory, you know, indicators were starting to get bad with the oxygen levels and stuff, sometimes it's too late, just through people not appreciating what they should do or as part of the process.
Yeah, well, that's very true. I mean, yeah, we were at a place for a long time in the pandemic. Seems like it was forever, where you were diagnosed and doctors didn't know what to do, or they didn't have a lot of tools in their armamentarium. The idea that, for instance, in the last 3-4 months here, where you're diagnosed, but your physician refers you immediately to a promising therapeutic, you can imagine for the patient, for the family, what a relief that is to think, yes, there is something that's effective against this disease.
Yeah, 100%. And it's and just knowing that is a comfort in itself, like you say to everybody. So brilliant. So now, Jeff, then that passes across over to Hassan, who's got to be responsible for the distribution. I would imagine the review, the checking on standards, checking on capability, checking on training, checking on everything, because at the end of the day, you can't afford for anything to go wrong with that particular, shall we say, solution. So Hassan, what have been the biggest challenges or the biggest issues that you had once you had to take on board that with regards to the logistics management?
I just want to tee it up with one point first before Hassan goes.
Yep.
The minute the product was approved in the UAE, I think, Hassan, we had a 6 to 8 week window for the first delivery.
Yes.
We started getting calls from the authorities in Dubai. How about 6 to 8 days?
Yeah.
So I'll turn it over to Hassan from that moment.
Well, yeah, I would say it was a unique experience. I mean, dealing with the product was such important, and the teamwork behind making it possible is something I've seen in the first time in my career. When you have people from production, quality, from freight forwarding, from airline, from a scientific office, and from commercial, from the agent, the importer, from the government officials and the sub-bodies, all working in one place, in one team, and same calls like every week. Or this is, let's say, a phenomenal team working. Let's say that we only saw it during this pandemic in order to have the product on time in the market. The outcome is that we have cut short, I mean, a process that's supposed to take months, long months, up to a year, into a few months. The logistics itself, it took a matter of like a couple of weeks for a product that is recently registered, sharing the technical data. I mean, deciding on the mode of transport, the equipments needed, the temperature control and the quality control on the way. Having all these people working as a one team from multiple countries, multiple entities, made this possible to be done fast and safely. There was no any quality incident from the trip, from the site into the freight hub, into the airport of origin, until the airport of the destinations, the delivery trucks. Everything was standby. It was pre-planned perfectly. Amazing teamwork, and the target actually achieved in unbelievable, actually, short timelines. This was an experiment. I mean, telling us, I mean, how teamwork can make miracles. I mean, before COVID, if you ask about a new product launch, we need to bring it to the market, you would be talking about how many months here? I mean,
yeah,
6 to 12 months.
6 to 12.
Sure.
We are talking about weeks, and we did it. I mean, this for me is the biggest takeaway from this experiment.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely incredible, and the word collaboration is overused in many areas, and it's it's more rhetoric than reality in an awful lot. But what was achieved is phenomenal, and then it also challenges us all, I think, to make sure that we're able to keep up with those sort of standards and results moving forward, because there's no reason why not. So a little bit of pressure moving forward for everybody, I think. Now.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Now we can do it. No problem, right?
It's now, we get used to it.
Yeah, you're used to it now. Okay, yeah. Well, let's see, because then that means there's lots of incredible things to come. Now, Hassan, once the decision has been made on a transportation partner, obviously, you have to rely on certain areas. Now, from my experience and my days back in ETIHAD, I remember, we used to get the most, shall we say, challenging of questionnaires and surveys from the pharmaceutical guys. And they used to really test everybody, and people say, oh, we never had this before, etc. And that was in the early days. So now I would imagine once you've gone through that, and then we hand over to Fabrice from ETIHAD. Now, Fabrice, you have to have incredible consistency and capability to ensure that there's no shortfalls, not just from a PR perspective, but also because of caring about patients and caring about the process that's gone into place. And it's this word care, which I also feel is so important, that's come from this pandemic. When people really genuinely care, my God, there's so much they can do. And there's also so much goodwill and good spirit as a result of it. So as far as the compliance is concerned, and as far as the consistency, I mean, you guys had to really, really push the boat out.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. And I will just follow up with what has been said by Hassan and Jeff. You remember last year when we were talking about what's happening during the pandemic in terms of big changes, the collaboration and transparency that is needed.
Yep.
And 1 year ago already, we were getting prepared to the global COVID-19 vaccine distribution. And this is where precisely we assessed that from a compliancy point of view, because this is a question, from an infrastructure point of view, from a station capability point of view, not only we were up to date, but that we were capable of sharing this information in advance so that we can anticipate any kind of large pharma flow. And that is exactly what happened with Sotrovimab and GSK, where happily we were prepared from an infrastructure, from these important data that you need, of course, not only to share, but to assess. And we provided these elements, much in advance, so that what we had to work on is shortening the lead times. And maybe you will come a bit later, on this precise question, what exactly was at stake in terms of operation and handling. We were making sure months in advance also that anything coming within the pharmaceutical logistic flow that we're handling would be handled perfectly, because everything would have been anticipated, and that was the case. And now back to your remark on how do we care, I can tell you that from top to down, ETIHAD Airways, everyone was implied into this movement, and that really facilitated also, I would say, the D-Day where the actual shipment came in Abu Dhabi, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody was so proud and pleased that it all went as smooth as it did. Yeah. And from what I understand, from wheels down, within 1 hour, the first infusion was taking place.
Yeah, this is incredible.
3 hours, but yeah, real fast. 3
hours. Okay, so brilliant. So arrived within one, and that's incredible, And at the end of the day, when I was talking to some people, and they were saying, like, at the beginning, they were saying, no, don't worry, the scientists will come up with something, because pressure always delivers. And they were making reference to putting a man on the moon and doing all these other things. Surely they'll be able to. And bang! As soon as that came out, it's incredible what you've all done. Now, Fabrice, it doesn't show very often. And carriers like yourselves and many others don't get the chance to actually outline, the degree of training, the degree of monitoring, the degree of project management and process compliance that goes into this. Because at the end of the day, nobody, especially GSK, they don't want to see any excursions or any deviations from the controls that they put into their own product and packaging. So that particular responsibility is huge on you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And what is important for us is making sure that the requirements of GSK were totally understood. And as we both know now, this drug is very new, very sensitive. So this is in the recommendation of the right packaging that it starts. At that very moment, when we were talking last year about partnership and collaboration, one important actor into that is, in that case, Envirotener, so the active container supplier who was working closely with us in order to provide, the latest technology to be sure that from purely a temperature point of view, everything was respected. And we, together with the GHA, we were working closely on respecting the lead time, and that's purely, I would say, physical. But what is at stake for us also is making sure that from a compliance and regulatory point of view, all the documentation goes well. And that's something maybe that you don't see, when you're public as an individual, but which is also super important, and where the collaboration with the different government bodies was super important. DOH, Department of Health, but also the customs were playing a very important role in facilitating the pre-clearance of the shipment in order for us to physically constrain the cutoff time, to reduce it by 50%.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point there, Fabrice, as well. And it's also one you mentioned about documents, but it's also one about data sharing and how the whole chain now can really do wonders if they have the confidence and the willingness to actually share that data because they care. And it's a little bit like being in a schoolyard. You're happy to share everybody else's sweets, but when they all come for your bag, you're like, whoa. So this is one example, where for the good of everybody, that data sharing and the speed of process is so important, which needs digitization and automation. So that's excellent. Now in the video, it shows clearly like the GHA activity on the ground. It shows the EnviroTainer, which is important. And one of the points I made earlier was, and this, Hassan and Jeff, please feel free to jump in on this one. And I'm coming to you, Andrea, don't worry, I haven't forgotten. But as far as the EnviroTainer and as far as the packaging from yourselves, GSK, what I would say to you now, Fabrice, is I think this has thrown up another little bit of a conundrum, because everybody wants speed. And in the video, it shows the handling, the EnviroTainer loaded on the dollies and then going into the reefer, and it's protecting the temperature and the guidelines all the way through. So the speed, especially now with customs, that to a degree takes away the urgency or the need to have such expensive facilities. Now, I'd be interested in all of your or anybody's comments there. And even though I haven't come to you specifically, Andrea, in the supply chain or the process, please feel free. What are your opinions now on the importance either of effective packaging and specialist containers like EnviroTainer and the speed of the whole process versus storage at a facility or at an airport?
Well, I can give some comments here. Remember that this first launch of Sotrovimab came in June. It's in the middle of summer in Gulf, where the temperature is nearing 50.
It was hot that night.
It was night and day.
Very hot.
Yes.
10:30 at night. We were sweating bullets on.
So we're talking about the most hot season in the year and a new tooth product. But however, based on the product stability, the thermal stability that we do have other products with the same range of 2 to 8 temperature. We are not using EnviroTainer as they have been tested since many years through other devices or other, techniques that was proven safe. But for Sotrovimab as a new product, we need to go with the most safe, the most assuring mode of transfer. The selection was an EnviroTainer as an active cooling device to avoid any kind of exposure to the ambient temperature during any point in the supply chain from the door of the manufacturing site until it reached to the warehouse of the last of the distribution hub.
Yep.
This was the background of choosing the EnviroTainer, and of course ETIHAD. We have an experience with ETIHAD before. We have experience with EnviroTainer, so it was not a totally new experience, and the ETIHAD is already. We're already working with GSK previously in different products, so this was not a first time. This is why we were confident to go with that direction.
Okay, very, very good. And now, Fabrice, if you want to answer about the facilities, because the whole industry, whether it be as a result of addressing GDP or CIV, there's been huge investment in fixed asset with regards to, pharmaceutical and cooling facilities and the capabilities. Do you think that this this, the vaccines and pharma in general, and now obviously you've got responsibility for perishable. Do you think that this whole process is going to change the outlook now on fixed facilities rather than a faster process with automation?
That's a good question, but it really depends on the product itself and its kind of requirements. I mean, in this case, we really wanted to short off the cutoff time, and that's why the usage of an active container was the best solution for us to avoid any storage, which didn't prevent us first from having a contingency plan, and that's super important. So in that regard, of course, we would have needed a pharmaceutical facility if anything would have gone wrong. Yeah. It's part of any plan, and that's super important. The second part is that through this setup, we managed to operate what we call cross-docking. So effectively, we didn't go into the storage area. We didn't go through the warehouse. We went directly from the aircraft parking lot to the truck, waiting for the container, and in very few minutes. But that wouldn't have been possible if we wouldn't have anticipated and cleared the documentation I was talking about before.
Correct.
And back to your question in general, once again, it depends on the flow. I cannot make a general statement by saying, okay, in the future, you wouldn't need any storage facility. That wouldn't be right.
Yeah.
Certain product would require, depending on the country, by the way, would require long hours, even days before being customs cleared. So you would definitely need a nice pharma facility over there. Yeah. Some other products, on the contrary, would require the same kind of setup. But then the question is more open, and sorry to say so, but the usage of an active container or hybrid container is what is called a premium product within our pharma products. It's not the cheapest one. So you also have some pharma commodities which have much less value in a way. Yeah. And that would require a normal supply chain that can stand few hours in the airport. And in that precise case, you would need, and you need advanced infrastructure, advanced monitoring, advanced trained personnel and staff. And I guess it is still the larger volume, something like 70 to 80% of the global perishable flow and global pharmaceutical flows do require or does not require to shorten that amount of time.
Yeah. It's definitely a challenge, though, and it's something that, as a result of this, it's going to make people think, and especially airports, with regards to, facilities and whether or not it's to individual handling companies or a central opportunity to cover the contingency and the issues, but also to speed up the customs clearance. So I'm sure from GSK's perspective, what they want to see is a lot more data sharing and a lot more efficiencies across the whole world so that their products get a much better chance of being as effective as possible. Now, Andrea, Nice little segue for you, my friend, because obviously you're the one who has to provide the facilities as well, and the trained staff, and you're a tried and tested partner of ETIHAD, and I know your organisation very well personally. And now, what were the biggest challenges that you had, Andrea, during this particular period?
Thank you, Chris. Well, actually, I heard before about being confident, about being prepared. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we retrained all our staff in Milan and our station of the network in order to be prepared, in order to be confident. I add that GSK in Italy visited with our other freight forwarder our facilities and our cold room in Malpensa. So this go in the direction of transparency for the client, for the airlines.
Yep.
The process need to be improved every day. That's why we have a very long relationship with ETIHAD. So we have received the shipment very early in the morning, and in the middle of the day, to 2:30, the flight was ready to take off from Milan. So there was a team ready in Malpensa waiting for this shipment, because as Fabrice said, we have a pre-alert from an airline, so we are prepared we gave priority of unloading. So the shipment was already unloaded inside the cool room. So no deviation of temperature risks. And then after a couple of control that we are obliged to do for the relationship with the airlines, but even for the CAV certification that we have, a very strict, it's a very high requirement for all the shipment. We were ready to prepare the shipment for flight. So it's a matter of a continuous relationship with clients, with the requirement. So it's not something that you can do just one time, or you have to be ready. You have to be ready. Since the start of the pandemic, we have in our training, we also make our people more sensitive regarding the final destination of the shipment. And in all the training, we repeat, those shipments goes to the patient. Please handle every shipment like shipment for your family, your friends. So that's why our colleagues in all the sector from operation, acceptance, and then build up, were ready, and they put a different eye on the handle of this type of shipment.
Yeah, I think you've hit a lovely point there, and it also covers the word care again. I was lucky enough to visit a few facilities, and walking around the facilities, the people that were working in there, I think there was 29 different nationalities, but what they all had was a common understanding of why their products were so important. So obviously all of us, but especially you, Jeff and Hassan, you know about the technical names and what they are. To Joe Public or Jane Public, that's not as well known. But when I went round, every single one of these particular products, they had what it was used for. And what they also had was they had videos from survivors, and their concept was that they provide hope. And every single person was able to resonate because they either had a friend or a family member or somebody that had either been affected, or in some cases, God bless them, they passed away as a result. So they were so focused on making sure every single detail and accuracy and repeatability was given the best TLC possible. So I think what you've just said there, what you just said there, Andrea, is so important, and it's also something that this pandemic has taught people. Now, if you take away the direct results of whether it's pharmaceuticals or perishables or what have you, people need to get that back in their everyday work again, and to appreciate how valuable and how important life is. And the best collaboration or teamwork is, your family, friends, everybody that you know. It's so important. So, what you guys have done is incredible. You know what I mean? I think there's lots of teams out there, but, you guys are the unsung heroes who've made this whole issue work, which is fantastic. Now, a question I've got open, and sorry, Andrea, did you want to continue there? Because I cut you off.
Just want to add that in this process, in this type of shipment, ALHA was just a ring of the supply chain. So we know that we are just a part of that, but because we are just a part of that, we know that everything had to be done in the proper way. So you talk about the speed up the process, speed up the documentation. So in that particular moment, ALHA with pharmaceutical vaccine, and even for these new products, and that's one of the things that we continue to repeat in every refresh, that even for the clinical trial, we say if you accept or have to handle a very short, a very little piece of a shipment, please watch out, because this could be a clinical trial, maybe something that could very, very important. So the dimension is not related to the importance of the value of the shipment. And this is what we repeat almost every day with my team in Malpensa and Fiumicino, with people on duty of the operations.
Yeah, no, it's so important. And just coming back to you guys, and thanks very much, Andrea. Coming back to you, Jeff and Hassan, the issue of Sotrovimab, and now you look at some of the countries that haven't got as high an uptake of vaccines as possibly we would all like to, and there's reasons depending where you are, regionally within the world. This is a great support now to those particular countries.
Well, yeah, I think what we saw was after the U.S. FDA approved the product, issued the emergency use authorization, followed by the UAE. Within hours of the UAE, Bahrain, then Kuwait, but really here in the Gulf, we saw, once that green light is flashing at you, the product is approved. The pressure was really on to compress the timelines. And one thing I want to say here is, I got to know Fabrice and I got to know Hassan better on this project, but my clients in a way are typically pretty senior government officials and policymakers. And there was tremendous pressure on us to make this happen. The leadership in the UAE at the federal level, the leadership at the Ministry of Health at the federal level, the leadership of Abu Dhabi, both political and health. There was a lot of pressure to make this happen. And I think, the conditions here augured well for something good happening, in the sense that there's a very good health infrastructure. There's a very good aviation and logistics infrastructure. We have great hospitals and clinicians. Money is not a problem, in the sense that the healthcare system is well funded. So that really put more of a spotlight on us to get the products in. If the technology's been developed, it does raise the question, can we do it in 6 to 8 weeks or 6 to 8 days?
It's incredible. And can I ask you now, guys, as well, and obviously, it's a success story, and it really is. And the acronym for the word CARE that I use is consider all responsibilities everywhere. So again, coming back to what you said, Andrea, you're only the GHA, but not at all. Every team has certain high-profile positions, but every team has workhorse positions. And I think that's what's come out of this whole process and has made people really appreciate and respect the supply chain. But now coming up, obviously you've got Expo 2020. Are you expecting any new variant impact? Have you made provisions for that? Is there any plans that have been done in the region there to accommodate what may or may not happen as a result of that, that influx of people from all over?
Chris, sorry, to whom was that question?
That's basically to anybody, guys. But whoever feels that they're more well versed with giving some sort of feedback. Obviously we spoke, and I think several of you spoke about contingency planning and about risk awareness and risk analysis, which is something that every single company has now put more focus on. But when you've got such a successful reduction in numbers as you have there, and now you've got something coming in at the time of the year with the Expo 2020, are you expecting any extra activity or extra focus? How well prepared are you all with regards to what might or might not be necessary?
Well, Expo is the plan for the coming few months. It includes, of course, the possible impact of Expo and what could generate of additional need, plus all the scenarios, the medical scenarios, which the government officials are working on and updating us regularly of what will be their expected demand. So we eventually follow the local authorities' predictions and demand forecasting to plan our supply accordingly. So definitely, these kind of factors is taken care of by the or taken in consideration by the local authorities in terms to make sure we always have a sufficient available products on time when needed, in case of, God forbid, there is an increase of cases. Of course, no one wishes that, but in case this happen, we are prepared to secure it when it's required.
I think one of the secret sauce things I would add here, Chris, so we haven't really touched on this, but very quickly, early in June, as we thought about how to compress the shipments, so we started daily calls. And Fabrice was on these calls from ETIHAD. We had the Department of Health officials, certainly the GSK folks. By the way, from the GSK folks, I think we had people calling in from Singapore, Milan, Parma, North Carolina, London, they were calling in from all over. But we started this habit early on, ahead of those first shipments, of daily calls. And there was a lot of vital information sharing there. Now, as things have evolved, as the supply situation has matured and stabilized, we're now having weekly calls. And those weekly calls are that really essential touch point. If the government is anticipating a spike, the numbers could climb back up. We can adjust, Hassan and the team can adjust. They can work with ETIHAD. We can adjust the supply schedules accordingly.
Very good, very good. And now what I'd just like to do, just to throw a little question to both you, Fabrice, and Andrea. Now, all the learning experience from this particular exercise, how can you guys now put that learning experience into the general process management within the carrier handling agent relationship?
Yeah. If you allow me to start with, I mean, two key elements, which seems very simple when you think about it, but communication is key. But how do you make this communication? I mean, everything was relying on the high level of communication information. As Jeff just said, it was about daily meetings, daily calls, and we have made sure that this information and sensitive information has been kept in the right channels. But in the same time, we had to make sure that from a management point of view, the awareness, but also the focus on the D-Day was enough. Yep. So it's really being, I would say, capable of absorbing the stress that Jeff was talking about and translating it into the right motion internally. And you can do that only with the right communication, right level of collaboration. And every stakeholders of the pharma supply chain is super important from origin to destination. And what is really for me a success is the level of confidence and trust with all the stakeholders. There was no questions, there were no doubt on the importance of the shipment, but also because we are, I guess, professionals also. We know on how to handle this kind of shipment. So that's something which is afterwards very pleasant to check and to see. And when we are talking about communities, and I'm doing a lot of these, speeches and talks within the different conferences, it's something really concrete and real that you can testify within the last 18 months. And this is great. I mean, that's the way to go forward.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And Andrea?
Yes, if I can add something, the key element that we have learned from this particular event is that we need to be prepared. So communication, daily briefing, but even training. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have done a lot of simulation. You talked about, Chris, before about contingency plan. Well, we had different contingency plan for different scenarios for charter. So we are ready to be prepared if we have, as you said before, a new product, a new kind of a new flow, a new volume. We are ready to add flight in Malpensa or Rome. We are ready to add personal. Personal is prepared, so they know what they have to do. So we are ready. So that's the if we have to remember one thing about this particular event is that you need really a contingency plan. You need to talk with authorities, customs authorities. You need to talk with the trucking company. You need to be exactly in that specific hours in that gate to be unloaded. You need personnel, you need supervisor who follow the shipment since the acceptance to the flight. So contingency plan, training, and make people more sensitive and more ready. That's what we learned.
Yeah, very good. And Jeff and Hassan, can I just ask you guys, as far as your experience with the supply chain and you know how things have improved, and also with the different shall we say combinations within supply chain, but in this particular case with air freight, what were the most impressive things that you found with regards to your selected choice of partnership for delivery of your expectations?
Well, I mean, it was the right choice, I would say. I mean, if you're referring about our partnership with ALHA, of course, I mean, ETIHAD is, I mean, a big name, is one of the, I mean, most famous airlines globally, and for us, being a company in UAE, it makes sense that it is the first choice. It is our first option. And again, we have a long history already. It's not a new choice. I mean, it's a partner in place. For Sotrovimab, we needed just to confirm for everyone on the ground that, guys, make sure it is ETIHAD. Don't, I mean, in case of any shipment come, don't just look for any airline. Make sure it's ETIHAD because it is critical. Sotrovimab, we cannot risk mistakes. We have arrangement with their operations. We are confident with their quality of handling. So when it comes to Sotrovimab, we are all involved to make sure ETIHAD is handling that shipment. That I would say from supply perspective.
Yeah, I mean, what I saw, again, I'm the amateur at the table, you know, Fabrice and Andrea and Hassan are the real experts. But, you know, what I saw was an amazing flexibility. You know, we have our own ways of working at GSK. They're very stringent, very rigid, we can say, but they've worked for decades. And so how you get that packaged up and ready in the plant and what truck it goes on when, you know, we have a certain, I would say, rigidity. And ETIHAD was remarkably, you know, outstanding in terms of flexibility. By the way, there was some tension. I remember we were trying to schedule flights. There were some tense moments. I was pressing Fabrice. The Lamborghinis I didn't care about so much, but the hams and the wine, I was asking how many hams and wine would be displaced from Parma, from Milan on the flight. But no, his ability, you know, their ability to find to get a spot on the plane on very short notice and to pull the whole thing together. And as I say, it was blazing hot that night. I'll never forget, we were all on the tarmac. The British ambassador joined us, senior officials, Department of Health, from RAFID, from ETIHAD, and you know, to see that roll off seamlessly into the truck, to know that the first you know, patient would be infused about 2 hours later. She survived, by the way. Patient number 1 survived. So
thank God. Thank
amazing
God.
Amazing customer centricity, I think, is the best word for it.
I would add as well that we. The fact that the moment the flight arrived and landed, wheels on the ground, trucks of ETIHAD was just beside the airplane. There is no other airline could have done this, actually. Loading it, I mean, within minutes, literally. Usually, I mean, moving from the airplane to the warehouse or storage could take a couple of hours in tarmac area, which could be exposing it to the ambient. And in the case of Sotrovimab, ETIHAD, they did it in a minute. We didn't have an issue, and again, if it was any other airline, we might have even further few hours, let's say, a delay, but this didn't happen.
Well, there you go, Fabrice and Andrea. There's a nice little endorsement there, eh?
Yeah.
Always nice to hear positive feedback. Now, as well from you both, from Andrea and you, Fabrice, it's also highlighted that, you know, at the end of the day, in our industry, there's only 2 products: volume and value. And as far as understanding what goes into a value product, as far as the service, the effort, the training, the facilities, etc., it's also given both of you in your respective companies an opportunity to make people aware of that. And that awareness now is that shaping what you do in the future?
That's a good question, and thanks a lot, Jeff and Hassan, of course. But I mean, for us, it has been a tremendous, and it is a tremendous teamwork. It's all about teamwork. So when I saw everything happening very shortly, where I was super happy is that I could rely on everybody within the organization, and the same is happening nowadays. So we are making sure, and this element is important, that's communication and marketing in the good sense of it. And we have a fantastic team working with us on the marketing side, making sure that, you know, we can also celebrate these good moments, and making sure that the awareness and the recognition of the industry is being shared with every stakeholders internally is also super important. And this is what we do, and I guess this is contributing also to the success of ETIHAD Cargo Pharma Life product.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you. And Andrea?
Yes, from our side, you talked before about value and volume, but in our company, in ALHA, since the beginning, we have put a focus on pharmaceutical, building a specific team in Milan and Rome. So with certification, with training. So since the beginning, we put a focus on security and to be confident with this type of product. We have training for different type of active container, for example, because we are an handler, so we receive a lot of them. So we need to be ready to handle those type of container, biocontainer, and other type of supplier. In this case, so for pharmaceutical, as I said before, it's not a matter of value and volume, but it's a matter of product, it's a matter of patients, it's a matter of the importance of the handle the shipment. So that's why let's say that pharma need a different type of handling from general cargo. We need a specific team, we need specific gates. We are a business partner of ETIHAD Cargo since 2009. So during all these years, we trust each other. We know each other. So we share procedures. We have a quality agreement in place. We have SLA. So all these this work, also these documentations that sometimes seems a little bit boring, but it's needed. It's needed because they are the instructions for personal health that who handles a different kind of shipment. But when it comes from pharma, you have to be serious and you have to be prepared and confident to move and to know a lot of this product, and you know very well the product.
Yeah, and that's and that's a lovely, Andrea. That's a lovely endorsement as well for the people who are, you know, I heard a saying on a digital conference last week, you know, a score on the floor. You know, the people who really have feet on ground, who are doing the you know, the touch points, you know, they're so important, and they must never be overlooked. Now, gentlemen, as a team, very impressive what you've achieved, incredible, and thank God so many people are getting the benefit, not just of the product, but the way that you're all dealing with it so professionally and so competently. Now, what I'd like to do just before we finish this particular session is we had a digital event just on general air cargo, and at the end of every panel, we asked each person to come up with 3 things that they would like and support to be introduced within the short period, like between the next 6 to 9 months. I'm not going to do that to you guys, but what I'd like to ask you is, what would you love to see as part of now how the industry embraces what's been achieved and how we move forward together? Now, obviously that can come from different understanding from each of the 4 of you, but just what would you now really like to see happen in any part of the process or any part of the supply chain that affects your personal involvement on a day-to-day basis. And no pressure, but we will report these and we'll put these up. And please God, touch base, inshallah. Maybe next year when we have a face-to-face, we'll be able to reflect back and say, look, you know, this is what the thoughts were at such and such a point in time, and this is how it's panned out. So I don't want to put you under too much pressure, but who'd like to go first?
Well, Chris, let me also just kick off by, I'll offer a humble suggestion, but also just I want to give a quick epilogue to say that to date we've shipped about, or we've treated about 23,000 patients in the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, and Qatar.
Brilliant.
The shipments, the UAE has, Abu Dhabi and the UAE have served as our hub for distribution up and down the Gulf. Probably the best data or the most comprehensive data we have so far, the most up-to-date data so far, coming from the UAE, are reporting a reduction in hospitalizations of about 97%, reduction in ICU utilization by about 98%, and a reduction in fatalities that, according to their data, exceed 99.9%. So one thing I'd like to see now, if I could segue, would be, I think there are a lot of lessons learned here, both on the clinical side. I mean, we want to see the data I just shared with you. We want to see those validated. We'd like to see peer-reviewed journal publications around the success of the product, the benefits and limitations of the product. But the other thing is, I'd like to see, and I think this panel today is a start, I'd like to see more reporting out about what went very well in this collaboration. As a pharmaceutical company, I think that we overcame a lot of rigidities in terms of information sharing, and we got a lot more flexible in terms of getting on the phone every day and sharing up-to-date data as much as we had. I think there's a big learning in there, not only for pandemics, hopefully we will never see another one in our lifetimes, but for accelerating cutting-edge vaccines and medicines to patients who need it anywhere in the world, anytime.
Yeah, no, well said, well said. But I think one of the things that you touched on there as well with that data is it's so important now that everybody learns to live with it rather than wait for something else or you know, have all these problems with it. And it's the living with it that's going to make us successful. So, I mean, those statistics are fantastic. Yeah, no, brilliant. Right, guys, who'd like to propose something next?
I would say something. It kind of, I've touched upon like a few minutes ago, and it's more for the future, benefit for the pharma industry when dealing with airlines in general. It's about the challenges that pharma companies face during shipping, during airport handling between, as we said, between the airplanes and the storage location. I know that this is totally out of the airline control. There are, dedicated airport operation for that. But maybe the more influence or more collaboration with the airports. And I'm not talking about a specific airport, but wherever there is, an airport and you deal with, the more influence to have faster operation in the ground area of the airport, in the tarmac area, let's say. This will minimize the risk of exposure to either high or low temperature ranges. As we do this either from origin, when we are shipping from origin, like from Europe or whatever, during winter, temperature can go in minus. During the couple of hours between the warehouse till the airplane, this might impact the shipment with a few minus degree if the packaging was not enough, let's say. Similarly, during the hot season. This is only the thing that I would say it could be much better to be improved in the future. And I know it is not one part work. Many entities need to be involved to do it, but it's actually one of the main, let's say, priorities to focus on.
Yeah, Hassan, I think like you've touched on a point there that we've been talking about for some time, which is that the way the industry is developing now, you've got airports and GHAs who, if they partner up correctly and start to take accountability, responsibility, and influence over that particular ecosystem, being the airport, there's going to be a lot more airports in the future that are very, very pro or very, very centric on certain products, and that's going to make a difference. And if those airports are able to define a code of practice, which could be certain speeds, types of the design of facilities, future proofing, and obviously the green element and various other issues, it will totally change the way that cooperation works. So really valid. Thank you very much for that. Right, gents. Andrea, Fabrice, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, just in the continuity of what Hassan has been telling, and he's totally right. If we consider ourselves only as an airline working on one station to another station, of course, this is where some issue might happen, and that's exactly what did not happen, because the collaboration is enlarged to the full supply chain. So having this consideration only as an airline is super important. Working smoothly, on the handover moment, specifically if I take Abu Dhabi, is possible through the collaboration, of course, with the authorities, but also with the right partners, such as Miko, who was ready with his truck to go directly to the next step. And this is something which is happening nowadays in UAE, and specifically in Abu Dhabi, through the HOP consortium, where we gather together all the stakeholders of a pharma supply chain, and we are concretely working on this enhancement. As you were saying before, one important element is data. And also there, I see tremendous enhancement on how the data is being captured and how it is being shared almost real time. So if you remember 5 years ago, we were all talking about, having a nice control tower, being able to share the data. And it was still complex because we were a bit reluctant to share the data. And I guess, Chris, you've just made that point a few minutes ago. Nowadays, through the pandemic, and that's one of the benefits, I would say, and lesson learned, we can do so, and it works. And people are willing to do so, while maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they were not willing to do so. And that is for me a key lesson, and something on which we, in a way, capitalize and work with for the future. And that's something which is, for me personally, very, in a way, exciting and good for the industry. Yeah,
100%. Thank you very much, Fabrice. And Andrea, just to conclude.
Yes, just to conclude this nice conversation is that ALHA is going to, the goal of ALHA is transparency for the data. We have projects for putting RFID in our offline warehouse. So this could be a nice point for sharing data, having data, collecting data. Being a business partner with airlines, it not means only that you are present in an airport, but it's also being a tracking company who can handle a pickup in a production point of the client of the airlines, knowing the exact time of the truck arriving in the airport, checking the acceptance. So even for the tarmac, as I said before, we have done a lot of improvement in the two airport with our cool dolly. So even for this very critical part of tarmac, so since the cold room in the warehouse, since the refrigerated dolly and then inside the airplane, so we can guarantee the cold chain. So that's why the transparency could be a partner for us to show our improvement and to show the improvement that air cargo having during those last few years, I say.
Yeah, it's always good to show people how things are developing and improving as a motivation and incentive to continue to do so. Gents, we've come to the end of the session. It's an absolute pleasure. And I think if you remember back to when everybody was talking about vaccines and distribution, there was a lot of negative press about whether or not people had the capability to do it, whether they could join in, whether certain parties were worried about others. And I think what you've done and what you've proven has shown what can be done when a group of people care passionately about something. And the other thing, there's nothing as important as life. And my goodness me, Jeff and Hassan, if you're saving 23,000 potential lives, and you've got those sort of figures now being returned, well done to you. It's incredible, absolutely fantastic, and well done to everybody, because not only is it important, to maintain and support and save life, but also enjoying and appreciating what we do with it is important. And to see the passion and engagement from you for, it's something that any youngsters coming into any industry, if they see the passion and engagement of individuals within their particular specialized areas, it's encouraging, and it's also motivational to come into that particular business line. So thank you, gents, for being resilient, for being agile, for having superb pivot capability, and also, most importantly of all, to care about what you do and what it does for others. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. And something that you all might smile about, there is no Barry White music at the end of this, but if only, guys. So thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Chris.